Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone. And now, here's your host and CEO of Rue Global Impact, Deborah Rue.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deborah Rue, and I'm the CEO of Rue Global Impact and also a co-founder of a brand new nonprofit organization coming out called Billion Strong. Stay tuned to hear more about that. But today my guest is somebody that I've actually known for years. We kept running into each other at conferences, and sometimes you just meet people and you can tell they're your soul brothers and sisters. And I feel that way about Mohammed. I have been a fan of his work for many years, and it's really cool that he's coming on the show today. Mohammed Yousuf he works at the Department of Transportation, but he also is an author, and he also runs a nonprofit that helps children with disabilities all over the world. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And his book is called Ascending Adversity and Survivor of Disability Discrimination. And his organization is EquallyAble.org, which when I first met him, I thought was just in India. But he was telling me before we went on air that it's now in 12 countries. And so, Mohammed, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Deborah. Honored to be on your show.
I know you're a very humble man, but I really appreciate the work that you're doing in so many ways. And I know today we're not going to talk about the work you're doing with autonomous vehicles and making sure that transportation is accessible. I know the Department of Transportation is committed to making sure all of the technology is fully accessible around the country. But I appreciate that, but that's for another show when we have permission from the Department of Transportation to talk about it. But I do want to talk about your new book. And also, before we do that, let's talk a little bit about this organization that I know that you've had for a long time. When I first met you, you told me about it. And I remember where we first met. We met at the M-Enabling Conference that G3ICT does. And then we've met there year after year. But so tell us about EquallyAble.org, and I know it's in 12 countries, and maybe you can just tell us some of the countries that you're doing the work in as well.
Thank you, Deborah. Equally Able is about empowering people with disabilities. And what we focus on is to give them the tools to empower them in a way that they really become part of the society, a contributing member of the society. And what we have tried to do, and believe it or not, Deborah, we are in the 20th year this year. We are celebrating the 20th anniversary.
Congratulations.
And thank you. Yeah. So what we have tried to do is to focus on a few, not many, but give them what they need. So when I say that, we provide assistance with education, we provide assistance with equipment, and we also have been funding small businesses, something that these individuals are able to manage within their skill set and within the environment that they exist. And those really have been able to bring a number of individuals from not being able to do anything to be able to earn enough to take care of them and their families.
And I often talk about this. I know that you live in the United States and pretty close to me in the East Coast part of the United States. And I talk to people about the issues that we have here in the States within true inclusion and empowerment of people with disabilities. But when you leave the States and you start going into other country, it's at crisis mode in some places, just crisis mode. And I know in the past, I know that I thought at one point you were working with children, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe you always were working with adults to help make sure that they were fully included. And it's also interesting what you would do to help a child with a disability as opposed to an adult with a disability is it has to be different as well. Today when I was talking about this with somebody, she was talking from the parents' lens and she kept saying, but the parents want this, the parents. And I said, yep, but it gets to the point where it's not about parents anymore because I'm a parent, but it's more important about my daughter, Sarah, who's a woman at 33 years old with Down syndrome, and what she wants to do with her life, not just what her parents want to do. So there's that interesting part of that as well. But tell us a little bit more about some of the work you've done, because I think sometimes my audience members, they don't understand what it's like to be a person with a disability in some of these countries. And I know we're going to also move to talk more about your book, but do you mind just talk about, you already gave some really good examples, but maybe expand a little bit more on some of the ways that you've helped these individuals?
Of course. Yeah, no, I think a perfect question, Deborah. I mean, I think as a person, actually, we talked about crisis in other countries. I think that's really was the driver for me to have a life in the US. Had it not been for that, I probably would not have come to the US. The reason being that the challenges, even for people who are educated and are around the world, is enormous. So as an engineer with an engineering degree, I was struggling in India to find acceptance, find inclusion within the community, within the workforce, the corporate industry. Nobody would offer me a job as an engineer. And that really, it was a blessing in disguise. I was so depressed and dejected that I felt like coming to the US would be the best thing, and there is a chapter in the book about that, But then, what we are able to offer from what we have in the US, I mean, we are so fortunate, not only for the technologies that we have, not only for the inclusion that we see, but the respect and the dignity and the options that you are given to really excel to the full potential are some of the things that are missing. So what we have tried to do is to bring programs from the struggles that I have had in my life. So what I mean by that is like providing education where it is needed, or providing even simple things as self-employment, or like creating a small business. We are running a program called Give Hope 1,000. It is about creating 1,000 small businesses for individuals in their rural setting or in their urban setting, a organic vegetable shop, a small tea stall, no more than $500. And that, Deborah, really has helped to change the lives of the individual. They are seen differently within their communities. And with my background being in technology and innovation, we have also looked at opportunities to use technology. There is one active program in India that we are working with a very capable partner called the Digital Empowerment Foundation, is giving digital empowerment, giving them technologies, internet access, a smartphone, a computer, a printer that is connected, enough for this person to be able to have a digital center or an internet, cafe in a small village.
Which is amazing. We didn't really talk about your lived experience with disabilities, and I know we want to talk about that in the book, but do you mind just exploring that a little bit more? Because I'm sure people are thinking, wait a minute, he was an engineer and nobody wanted to hire him. And I know, once again, you address that in your book. That's on Amazon. But let's talk a little bit more about that. And then also, then maybe you can tell us about the book and why you wrote it and what you were hoping to achieve with it as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I think let's just go back to the point I was trying to make was like in India, I'm this person who has an engineering degree. I'm flagging it, asking people to give me a job. And then fast forward, I come to the US, I go to school, but then I'm the same individual which was not given the opportunity. And like I'm in a different setting now, in a different environment now, where people are seeing me in a like more at my capabilities, what I can offer, not so much the limitations or like the perceived notion of that, But then that really led me to work at Chrysler, at General Motors, and now, as Deborah, you mentioned, in being employed at the Department of Transportation for the last 10, 11 years, and being involved in like some immense policy work leading into the new technology, which really has a footprint not only on the US, but around the world, But then I think for people with disabilities, and especially like we see some of those issues in the US too, but the issues in the US are like negligible or minimum compared to the issues around the world. And that is that you don't have, access to employment, you don't have access to education, and more so the inclusion or the acceptance or the welcoming, environment that you need to have for someone to really grow and excel and show the potential that they have.
Yeah, that's what I've seen too, as I've As I've done work outside the US, I've realized that once again, when people talk about in the US that I'm privileged because I'm white, which I agree with that. But we also are privileged because we live in a developed country like the United States. We have privileges that we can then use to make sure our brothers and sisters in the other countries are not left out and forgotten about. And once again, that's the reason why I'm doing my work, and that's the reason why you're doing your work as well. But tell us more about the book, Ascending Adversity, Survivor of Disability Discrimination.
So the book is about my journey, my struggle, and I have had setbacks. I have my own struggles. I had not been to school. I did not go to school until I was 12 years old. So education was not part of like my being at one point. And one thing led to other things, and here I am. So as I look through my life, the journey that I have, I felt like these ups and downs, if I could document in a way that, that chronicles the struggle, but at least takes you to the end point of showing that good is possible. There is these struggles, there is these obstacles and setbacks. But if you pursue a path of hope, I think those things could change for better. So this is an effort to give hope to those who are in my situation. I having gone through that, I also realized there are many other people, at least some other people in a similar situation. And the hope really is that they could take a chapter out of the book and be able to get new hope and new inspiration to do something different.
And I would also say that, and we talk about this, we're starting to talk about this more in the States and around the world, representation matters. Knowing that somebody that looks like me, and whatever I mean by that, for example, with me, a woman that's successful is more meaningful to me than a man that's successful. I can identify more with the woman. An individual with a physical disability that I can see, if I myself have a physical disability and I see that they're an engineer at the Department of Education in the United States, even though they were born in India and didn't go to school until they were 12 years old. It gives us hope to look forward, which is once again one reason why we are working on this nonprofit to focus on identity. People really coming out and talking about their lived experiences with disabilities in a very authentic way, the challenges, the opportunities, the silver linings, everything along the way, but empowering each other, which is what I know that you've been doing with your organization for 20 years. Congratulations on 20 years. But Mohammed, do you mind telling us a little bit more about why did you not go to school until you were 12 years old? Because I can fill in the blanks in my head, and I know once again, I can buy the book, and please do buy the book, but don't only just buy the book. Remember, add a review, because that is how they rank it on Amazon. So if we review it, we buy it and we review it, it really helps others notice the book as well. So it's important to get the stories out about somebody who successfully navigated obstacles that a lot of people just cannot figure out how to navigate. I think the storytelling is very important. But do you mind telling us more, Mohammed, about why didn't you go to school until you were 12?
That's a great question. Partly two things happened. One is the schools where I was living were not accessible. When I say that, we didn't have a mechanism to have an individual with polio be transported to a neighborhood school. The other thing that had happened is my family was told that education is not a possibility. Maybe they are better off saving for me enough money that I could have a grocery store or some kind of a small shop later on. And that really was that. And then for 12 years, that thinking continued that he's going to have a shop and we need to save. That was what had happened. But I think to what I want to add is my situation was that the polio not only required me to have braces and crutches, but it had some profound effect. And as an individual, I also did not have had enough courage to feel that I'm capable, I think that's another point, that for people like us, that the support from family and your community helps you to grow over time and makes you who you are.
I agree. I agree. And you had mentioned you got polio at 2 years old. And I've been thinking lately a lot about polio as we're walking this path with COVID-19, because I know other friends that also coincidentally happen to live in India and get polio as children. And I interviewed a woman on the show a few years ago that this happened to, and she lost both of her legs to polio. And her parents just didn't know what to do. And so they put her in an orphanage, and an American family adopted her. And she's gone on to live an amazing life. But I was just thinking about how important vaccinations like for polio are to eradicate this. But at the same time, we're in these fragile bodies and we get disabilities. And sometimes society will try to stop us from advancing and not being educated. And your family was trying to do this because of good advice. They just wanted to do that. Obviously, they love you, but you wanted more. You wanted to really learn, and you must have been so eager to go to school. So how did it turn out that you got to go to school? Tell us that story.
Yeah, so what happened was my grandmother was visiting one day, and she looked at me and I'm taking this boy with me. And she brought me to a different setting, a different environment, and had me go to school. But I was still, like, as I was talking about, lack of confidence or not really feeling you're able to. She had an assistant who would carry books for me. And the day that assistant didn't show up, I would not go to school. But that really was like the changing point. But then my parents really also played a huge role. And we have a chapter or two in the book about like how my dad and my parents, my mom and my siblings, and my friends and all my family really helped to see what is possible after that.
Right, which is exciting. And I have a coworker that lives in the Philippines, and she was born. She's blind. And this woman came into her mother's shop, and she saw her standing. She was a little girl, and she saw her standing there. And she said, "This little girl, she's got greatness in her. She's going to travel all over the world, and she's going to make a huge difference. And I see her connecting people, and she just has a beautiful life ahead of her." And Jasmine's mother said, "But she's blind." And the woman's like, "Oh, never mind. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm wrong." She wasn't wrong. Jasmine is going to have global impact. She's working for a global firm. Just because Jasmine's blind doesn't mean that Jasmine can't do amazing things with her life, and she is. And so I think what we have to do is we have to keep telling the stories. We have to keep writing the books. We have to tell our stories so that there is hope for other little boys in India and little girls in India and in Bangladesh and Pakistan and all these other countries. But we need to give people hope that somebody that looks like them, that grows up and can be an engineer, which is amazing, an engineer. One thing I always loved about engineers, especially when I go to the Middle East, is engineer is a title like a doctor or a lawyer. You are engineer, Yousuf. And engineers build our world. I want to be an engineer in my next life. So I wish that we would do that, and we would actually, in the States and other developing countries, really honor our engineers, because they're taking care of our world. They build our bridges, they build our technology. But I think it's very important for people that have lived experiences with disabilities to really speak up and talk about their stories. Once again, the hard parts of their stories, but the good parts. And I think we're doing a good job in the States and in the UK and Australia and other countries of starting to include people with disabilities in employment and in education, or I should say education and employment. But there's still a lot of work to be done everywhere. And I've noticed lately, Mohammed, that people that are working for large corporations, for example, or large institutions like our governments and stuff that have lived experiences with disabilities, we're starting to see them included more, but they still seem to get stuck where they are and then not promoted any further or considered. You should just be glad that you got a job. But I often see people that are working with disabilities are underemployed. And so I think there's just a lot of work that we still have to do. But tell us more about the book. Tell us more about, and also please comment on that as well. But then let's explore some of the way that you broke the book out and why you laid out the chapters the way you did to make sure you could have impact. But let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, so the book it starts with a chapter on my life or how I got polio, and then some of the early struggles. But really, I didn't, like, it's a memoir, right? So the memoirs could be written in so many different ways, but I didn't want it to like be a book on negativity or just thinking like life is not going to change, So it slowly progresses from talking about all these, I won't say dark times, but difficult times, and then coming to the US and my first couple of key jobs. And there is a chapter about how like my roommates, my life on campus folded. And that really was like, I think, a key chapter, not only in the book, but in my life itself. Because I left India feeling nobody, and I'm in search of a new identity. And I come to Wayne State University, Detroit, Michigan. And that ended up, being my second home. I was so well accepted, there, that I forget the struggles, the pain, the problems I have in India. From there, it really fast forwards to like getting married, having kids, and leading a life. It's like such a proud moment to be a father, to be a husband, and be able to take care of your own whole household. And then my jobs at Chrysler and at General Motors. Maybe a funny story I could share here is like my first corporate interview was at the Chrysler Corporation. And when I got there, I'm walking on leg braces and crutches. The engineering center was at a location which had some very weird insurance policies. And what that required is I cannot be on crutches on their facility. So literally we had to look for a wheelchair, and my would-be boss, he had to find a wheelchair. And when he put me in a wheelchair, we didn't have a ramp, to go anywhere. So we come back again in the lobby. What do we do? Can I interview you here, like in the lobby, visitors area? But, I think when I look back, I'm just thankful. I could have been somewhere else, like not really had the life or the impact or the friendship and the people in the family. So feel so blessed because of those. And then towards the end, I bring it back all together, just taking small steps on how I think one thing that really had played a key role in my life is to not lose hope, and keep trying. And big things are not going to happen overnight. You have to take these very small steps, but very deliberate steps if you want to get somewhere.
I like that word deliberate. Deliberate is a very important word right now. I think we all have to be more deliberate about making sure people are included. And I also like, Mohammed, that it wasn't good enough to you to grab your own life, become a successful entrepreneur, become married, have children. You wanted to make sure that others were helped. And that, to me, that is the sign of a great leader and a great man, that you're not just taking, because you're right, you've got to have hope, and hope is a beautiful thing. As an entrepreneur, there have been things that I've been hopeful for that was going to turn around my company that didn't happen. But during that time when I had the hope it was going to, it actually helped me survive getting to that point where I realized that hope, maybe that particular hope didn't come true, but it allowed me to go to the next thing to hope for. But I think one of the best things that I've ever done is when I want something, I give it to somebody else. I want love, I want hope, I want a chance, and I give it to somebody else, and then it comes right back at you. And I know that you've lived your whole life that way, but I just was wondering if you would talk just for a few minutes about why it was important to you to give back so that others could also find their way forward like you did.
So there were people in my life who had done that for me. But more so, I think what I realized is for us, sometimes this is a very small part of your time, It doesn't take much for you to make a phone call, or connect two people together. But that means a whole lot more to the individuals who are at the receiving end. And in other cases, like we are able to look beyond. If you are in a situation and you're going through some negative times, so you are having a bad day, individuals tend to just get drowned in that, and it's difficult to think positively or think something better is going to happen. For me, it is easy to come and look at that situation and say, maybe there are these options that are possible. So it is also about giving, like, not only hope, but building a new vision or giving this sense of possibility that something better is possible.
Yeah, said. I want to remind the audience, and we'll put a link to the book. Once again, please buy it, but please leave a review and share it. It just, for authors, that is such a blessing. So it's Ascending Adversity, Survivor of Disability Discrimination, and Mohammed's nonprofit is EquallyAble.org. Mohammed, are you also on social media? I know that the website is www.equallyable.org, and we'll also provide that information in the text and stuff. But Mohammed, tell the audience how they can get hold of you.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. If you just Google Mohammed Yousuf, maybe you want to say USDOT or Ascending Adversity, that will bring you to. I'm also on Twitter. I'm not so active on Facebook, but I'm also on Facebook. And I think the easiest way to, this is my book. You could find it almost in all.
I like the book cover is very nice.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you. So you're able to find it almost.
Did you create the book cover?
I worked with a team to create that. It's an awesome cover. It's really well designed. But you could reach me on any of the platforms, and if I could be off from the foundation point of view, or in terms of anything that you want to run by, happy to shoot an email or a note to me. And Deborah, can't thank you enough. We talked about our friendship, but really I'm honored to be on your show, and you and I can talk for hours on some of the things that we talk about. This is all some very important topics. And we need to continue to do our work in making this world a better place.
I agree. Often at conferences, you might see Mohammed and I over in the corner talking about solving all the world's problems. It's going to take all of us. But thank you so much for being on the show. Once again, please support his work by buying his book, by donating to his nonprofit, by getting engaged. You can volunteer to help him. There's just so many ways that we can help each other. But Mohammed, thank you so much for being on the show today. And I look forward to having you back on to talk about more of your work in the future. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Talk to everyone soon. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Human Potential at Work, brought to you by Rue Global Impact. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you consume your audio. To learn more about Rue Global Impact and the services we provide, visit rueglobal.com. To learn more about how you can become a sponsor of Human Potential at Work, email David at rueglobal.com. That's David at rueglobal.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back next time with a new episode.